let's do it.
Let's do some okay. So the question Dennis and I were discussing and realized we weren't recording. I asked him for a team level opportunity discussion. In other words, what teams are going to have the most opportunity nuggets? I'm calling them the opportunity nugget index, not necessarily player level, but kind of a holistic view of the team. And I mentioned that to me, Jacksonville was that team for me last year with all the advancements. I wouldn't have predicted that. I was not invested heavily in that concept, and I should have been. I did draft ETN, I did draft Strange, but I didn't draft enough Lawrence, and so I didn't really fall through on that. That didn't really gel as something, and I think this team level opportunity index, Dennis, that I'm going to kind of ask you to work on in the next months is it allows us, where's the fertile ground? Where are the opposite? Where the danger? Where the opportunity is a mirage? So why don't you give us your teams that you're seeing now at the upper end of that?
Yeah, and here's the thing is when it comes to opportunity, you want the chances to have change. Okay. I think we're all pretty good in this industry of identifying, that Drake London is going to be fabulous, that Bijan Robinson is going to be fabulous. The value in fantasy football is finding those nuggets of guys that are improperly priced at ADP. And last year I did have Jacksonville on my radar
Right.
because I loved ETN. I thought ETN was being priced below what I had as his floor. Like his price was so cheap that he could have had a similar season that he had the year before and he'd still be okay. And
Right.
I didn't expect him to do that. I expected him to be much, much better. I liked Brenton Strange last year for Jacksonville. I couldn't scream about the tight end opportunity more. And injury kept him from being a bigger success than he was, but he still didn't, he was okay. Like he gave you some solid weeks. And I didn't like the wide receivers at all. And I did like Trevor Lawrence. And the reason I liked Lawrence is he had been hurt the year before. And the two previous seasons, he had an 80 and a 94 as his MVP. And he was being priced as if he was up below a 50
Mhm.
on MVP. I love those guys. He had all upside potential, and I really liked him. This year, right now, February 7th, so a lot is subject to change. But the teams that I'm looking at in my initial study, and just to let you know, I've got 30 of the 32 teams done right now.
Right.
Tennessee and Washington, I need to finish, but I've looked at their data enough to understand where those teams are. And you asked for five. I'm not sure I have that fifth
Well,
one yet.
I just, yeah, it could be
but it's a
seven, it could be two. I'm
but
just,
it, but it's a good way to look at it of
yeah,
saying who are your top five teams for opportunity, and four of the five, and I don't have them ranked 1 through 4 yet,
right.
but I think it's my top tier where I expect a lot of chaos this off season heading into the free agent period and then the draft and whatnot. I'm very intrigued with Arizona. They could have a change at quarterback. They could have a change at running back. They could have a change at wide receiver. Then obviously, McBride is entrenched as the tight end. He'll be fabulous. But every other position you could have wide open changes. Indianapolis is the exact same way. Indy, because of injuries to Daniel Jones, is he going to be back? Are they going to re-sign him? What is going to happen there? Jonathan Taylor is as solid as can be. He'll be back for uh, probably another season, although they have an out with him where they could trade him if they thought they could get some value without, hitting a bad dead cap period. Their wide receivers are wide open. Pierce is a free agent. Pittman's got the potential to be moved. The only wide receiver they have who's under contract, guaranteed through next year, is Downs. And so you've got a wide open field there again, except for the tight end. We know Tyler Warren coming off of a good rookie year. He's going to be even better next year. So those are my first two. And then I look down the road on other teams, and it's the Jets. Like the Jets, now the Jets could totally flop the preseason part of their journey. They could have a worse offensive line. They could have a worse quarterback. They could have a worse running back. Like they could totally botch this. They are the Jets after all. But they could have so many changes going on that they are an intriguing place to see who is going to land there. And then Garrett Wilson, I'm really interested to see where his price comes in drafts. And we'll talk a little bit about that. And we'll talk even more about that next Tuesday with Joe Carlton on the Sports Affiliation. When we take a look
at the Aces Up podcast.
Yeah, on the Aces Up podcast, looking at way too early best ball values. Mm-hmm. But I'll be intrigued to see how the world of drafting reacts to Garrett Wilson, because I think he's going to have a big season if they can patch and fill at the quarterback position. And then my last team is Tennessee. I absolutely love what Tennessee has done. I think they brought in better coaching for Cam Ward. I was actually intrigued by the way he finished the season. We saw a much better quarterback in the last 4 games than we saw in the first 4 games. And their offensive line hadn't gotten any better. But they started learning how to use a very bad offensive line to be better. You got Pollard and Spears. Who knows if they're going to bring in another? You got Mullings, the rookie who didn't play much at all, that I'm intrigued about as a power back. If you can build a better offensive line, I've been bragging about this Gunnar Helm kid at tight end. I think he could make a big step forward. I love the young wide receivers. You got DK, you got Ayanamore, you got Restrepo, who they signed as an undrafted free agent last year because he had some off the field issues. And you got this Prosh kid that I look at him and I go, man, are they going to bring him back? Are they going to, he's like a patch and fill guy, but he's that role player type that could make the other guys better if they bring him back. And I'm kind of intrigued to see where he lands. He's just and I'm not saying for fantasy football, I'm saying he can make the other players around him better in what he does good. Right. What he does good in football is not reflected in fantasy football stats. But those are the 4 teams that I'm looking at that I'm like, man. And what do most of them have in common? Most of them change coaches with the exception of the Colts.
Well, I just think it's a starting point. Here we are, Super Bowl Eve, the 7th February. You've got to, I think, go top down in our view, and I believe people jump in at the bottom and they miss the environment. And if you go top down, it's some of your research and looking, I think you'll tend to not miss as much. We're all going to miss stuff, right? come about 3 or 4 weeks in, we're going to look back and say, wow, I really missed out on whatever. We all do it. I really missed out on Lawrence last year. I was drafting, probably too much Love and not enough Lawrence at that time, right? I was happy with Gibbs, Stafford, that, for those later quarterbacks, but I didn't have Lawrence the way I should have. I mean, we all look back and see that. So I'm hoping the top down and emphasizing that, and I'm making Dennis because his pattern and skill set seems to me to synergize with approaching these questions, Dennis. So I'm using you as, if you go fishing, if you got two lines in the water, you're going to catch more fish. So Dennis, you're
Yes.
my fantasy football fishing line. I'm hoping you'll snag us some treats. You've shown it with your rookie opportunity. You've shown it with your philosophy of better than zero, and so I'm going to harvest your skill set again with this top-down opportunity for at the team level and maybe even at the position level, if required. And so I'm kind of, fantasy football, kind of setting up the environment for us to prosper, to make more money. That's what we're could care less that people, well, boy, you guys were wrong or right on. Where's my rate of return? That's what I'm going for. And I didn't get enough last year. 11% is not enough. I know if you're investing your portfolio, I mean, if you're my age, Dennis, although all those gambles don't sound so amazing when I was 20 years old and was starting investing, my retirement fund. And, so I like the safety of treasuries and other kind of guaranteed income. So I'm very, very safe on that. And 11% is damn good if you compare, what you can get with T-bills. So, but I'm greedy. I want 50%, Dennis. So that's what I want you to help me do is bring in, reel in them checks. Because I got a wife who likes to travel and buy lots of things. So Dennis, I got business to do.
Yeah, and here's the thing in fantasy football, you need to get a high percentage of your teams to the playoffs
Hmm.
and get a high percentage of your teams to the final four.
Hmm.
Once you do that, that is where some luck does kick in fantasy football. So when I look at my rate of return, and that's how you ultimately grade anything in sports gambling, whether it's fantasy football, horse race, handicapping, whether it's playing, you know, sports bets, whatever. It's rate of return that speaks. Like you can have the best process. If you're losing money, it's not a great process.
Right.
In fantasy football, because so much is concentrated at the top end of the winnings, it's not just a case of being consistent winning wise from start to finish. You need to peak at the right time. And that's where injuries come in to account. And yes, a good roster strategy minimizes the bad effects and maximizes the luck.
Hmm.
But I've had years where I didn't feel like I did as well because I placed fewer teams in the final four, but everything that I had in the final four won. Like I just had a magical season. And my best I ever did since I've been keeping count and I've been keeping really close statistics for the last 20 years in this. The best year I ever had, I did like 3.2 times my money. That's insane. You can't expect to do that every single season, but you can expect to win every year and set yourself up for those big years. So 11%, I can have 11% as my, as my regular rate of return that I can count on a less than great year. Man, sign me up. Because if you're doing that, if you are consistently winning every year, which is possible in fantasy football. I mean, I'm not the luckiest guy in the world, but I've done it 16 years in a row now. I've had a positive ROI. That's hard to do with a bad process. It's easier to do with a good process. And that's the whole game plan here, is having a good process. When I look at our sifting of the first 5 rounds last year in the draft, the guys we put up red flags for, and we had reasons for putting up those red flags, we had more of those guys have trouble than the guys we said were bulletproof.
Yep.
Now, again, it's not injuries. Okay. Injuries you cannot forecast. Although when I look at the data and I look at specific players that I would have a hard time spending a top draft pick on, in 3 of the last 6 years, Christian McCaffrey has not given you 10 healthy games. That's why I'm okay with passing on a guy if he's too early in that first round and having him beat me. Like, go for it. Because 3 out of the last 6 years, he hasn't finished a season. That is a red flag. Even though you can't predict injuries, when you have that much time missed, that's not a guy that I want too early in that first round. Now you get to the end of the first round and I'm tempted, but I'd rather take something a little safer because I want to ride out the whole process. And that's the thing I think people get. And I've made the same mistake myself. It's like, oh, I'm going to draft this guy because he could be really good. Well, that's a bad process. Like, avoid guys and let them beat you and not worry about it. Because if you're playing in enough leagues, you're playing in 15 to 20 leagues to spread out your risk. Your process, you won't have to say, oh, I've got too much of this guy. Because the first 5 rounds of a draft, that will be all sorted out by your draft position. You know, you're not going to have too much Jamar Chase. You're not going to have too much Bijan Robinson next year because the draft position will be random enough that you're not going to get enough chances at him. So take him when you got the chance is the thing. But you're right. The first 5 rounds, just avoid mistakes. That's the big thing in fantasy football. I am so convinced that rounds 8 and beyond are where you win and lose. And that can be determined by how you forecast player improvement, but more important, who's the next guy up? I want as many of those next guys up as I can get, and I want a sound strategy that protects me against injuries. Like I mentioned Bijan Robinson. I'll take him with the first pick in the draft. But whoever Atlanta has as their backup running back next year, it's not going to be Algier. It'll be somebody else. Carter's the only other guy on the roster right now, but they might draft somebody on day 2 or 3 to fill a role for them. They might bring somebody else in as an inexpensive free agent, whoever that is. If I've got Bijan Robinson, I'm probably protecting myself with an insurance policy, just like I did with Ray Davis and James Cook last year. Now, you never got to use the insurance of Ray Davis. I was okay with that. Cook had a hell of a year because he stayed healthy. But I think you don't need to really set up the process to be good when the top dog fails, but treat it like insurance and draft your team so you've got strength in each 4 quarters of the fantasy football season. And I think you'll do much better. But very intriguing to look at opportunity this time of the year because you don't know what free agency is going to do. You don't know what the draft is going to do, but you can know which teams are more likely to make a move. And that prepares you for reacting when they do make that move.
I agree. Shall we
All
start the
right,
show?
Professor, let's start the show. And I think today, as we head into Super Bowl, tomorrow, we should combine our 2 shows.
Okay.
Our matchup lab, of course, will take care of the Super Bowl, and our science of fantasy football up front will take care of all the other great things we want to talk about. And folks, remember, we are not going away after the Super Bowl. We'll have both shows almost every week during the off season. How you doing, everybody? This is Dennis Michelson. Welcome to a very special edition of a combined show with the science of fantasy football and the matchup lab here on the science of fantasy football and the sportsaffiliation.com. Oh, why the science of fantasy football? Why, oh, why? It's because when you combine a meteorologist and a biologist, they're going to use the scientific method that is guaranteed to give you the base of a better process in fantasy football. How can I give any guarantees? Well, it just means that we're going to be using statistics to guide us to answers instead of cherry picking statistics to find reasons to support what we already thought. And joining me as he does each and every week, he is the fantasy professor. He's a real professor, Mr. John Bush. I am shocked that asteroid hitting the stadium didn't poll better when I asked people who they wanted to win the Super Bowl.
Okay.
Only 12%.
Yeah, I was laughing at that. Yeah. It's an interesting game from lots of different angles. I will not be betting. I will be watching vaguely. I'll be visiting some friends and probably not doing much anything other than chilling. So I'm not crying one way or the other, whatever happens. I would love to see lots of points and spectacular catches, and I would like to see less of the referees making themselves seen, right? So no penalties called, and lots of touchdowns, and lots of long runs and passes. That would be optimal. And I'm sure the halftime show people will be cranking. They're already ready on either side of the coin, so I'm sure that's going to be extra interesting as well. So I'm just going to kind of watch the TV and see what they all throw at us, Dennis.
Yeah, my stepson JD has a fabulous Super Bowl party every year. Now,
Nice.
this would be the 4th time at his house here in town
Hmm.
that they bought. This is the first time without the Chiefs
Yeah.
as a participant in the Super Bowl
Well, you're
at
going to
JD's
wear
party.
your
So
Chiefs regalia, aren't you?
no,
What?
I think I'm going to wear the Hall of Fame sweatshirt that I got
Mhm.
last year when we went to go visit uh, down there in Canton. I
Yeah.
think I'll stay away from my Chiefs gear this year.
Oh, well, I wear my Saints jacket, Dennis, because I wear it all the time. Uh, in this cold weather, it's cold here. It's 52 degrees. We're freezing down here in the South. So,
That is a cold day by Southern standards.
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
telling
And
you.
racing is picked up down here,
Oh
horse
yeah,
racing. You and
yeah,
I both love that down here at Oaklawn. And so at Hot Springs, everybody should visit Oaklawn once in their life. It's a great place. Lots of fun stuff to do in
fabulous.
Hot Springs.
Love Oaklawn.
Yeah,
Um,
it's
it,
nice. It's nice.
great racing, great people,
Yeah,
and a
it really, and
great
actually they have
environment.
really, really good food there,
Yes,
believe it or not. So it's really an intriguing thing. I am going to talk about some data a little bit before we hit the Super Bowl. I'm showing you the top-down view, Dennis. This is the number of data slots answering various questions that are already in the bank here. The last five or six we will be showcasing on the Aces Up podcast about best ball ADPs, Dennis. I've made a video. People can check that out on the website or the TSA. Cranky Professor uh, squawks about best ball tiers and what I'm seeing early opportunities or what I call underlays and overlays in running backs here, Dennis, and we'll talk more about that. But I've got lots of data, Dennis. I will not get to show all this to people. Some of this will be making up the research posters that you and I will be doing at the expo. Everybody should go to the Fantasy Football Expo in July in Canton. It's a great, great time, great people. It's all good. It's all good. Uh-oh.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah, definitely all good. You got to get to the expo. We've enjoyed it the last 2 years. I've been there 3 years in a row, but really enjoyed the last two visits, and we're looking forward to an even slightly larger poster session
Yeah,
uh,
we're going to try to
next
do
year.
more.
We've got a lot of fun stuff coming up, and just to let folks know, we're not going anywhere here
No.
during the off season. In fact, the matchup lab becomes the data lab
And
where we're
here's
going to,
some data lab stuff. Yeah.
yeah, and we're going to drill down on one particular thing every every week. And of course, the science of fantasy football is sort of the bigger picture of everything that is going on as well. But Professor, you have been hard at work with lots of interesting
Yeah.
data.
So I am working on one of our consistency metrics. Okay. So for folks that are new, and I hope there's a few of you, we fall into the category of emphasizing player consistency. Okay. Dennis got me on the bandwagon. If you'll go to the Science of Fantasy Football, if you'll dig around in there, and I probably should pull those out and re-advertise those, Dennis, on your MVP and all the uh, theory articles that you've posted and whatnot. But that's got me going. I have developed my own ways of looking at player consistency. And if you've played fantasy football, you know the word consistency, your expectations every week of a good player doing good, right? That's pretty much it. That's the definition. A good player that does bad too many weeks is not good for your team. So we want good players that are doing good stuff every week, and we want to measure that, and we want to have that information as part of our secret sauce for us to draft. And we're going to look for players that are valued less in consistency than they should be, right? We are looking for opportunity in the sense of a gambling opportunity, or if you're horse racing, an overlay opportunity. The horse is paying more money than they should based on their odds of winning. So we use consistency metrics. There, Dennis has several. I have several, and one I use is called COM, counts over median, and I look at the position. I look at the overall median fantasy points per week that quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, and tight ends generate in a PPR, 1 point PPR. And I use that as a foundational metric. I call it the COM. And I like to measure you know, how players do, right? So players that are scoring fantasy points over the uh, positional average each week is good, right? 18 divided by 18, 18 games or whatever it is, 17, whatever, so that would be one. So everything is in the one is the best, and zero, of course, they're always below median. That's probably not a good player to have. And then we have in between. And what you're seeing here, Dennis, is two questions that I ask about quarterbacks and their consistency. And I used from 2014 to last year's data. So, folks, this is a broad look. It's not from the 1940s, it's 2014. There, if you go too far back, the rules and everything have changed so much. Just look at the equipment. People used to just not even have pads. Just go out there and hit each other in the head, Dennis. Rocks on the field and mud and probably sticks and limbs, whatever, kind of very ancient way of doing things. If you go to Canton and you see the way the football was played in the 1900s and the early 1900s, is people broken bones, fingers, eyes out. It was crazy business. Then these people were crazy. Okay, football players were crazy. They're a lot more cerebral now than they were. And anyway, so I have COM data and I measure uh, quarterbacks. And the two questions were pretty simple, Dennis. There's this concept of a career arc, right? You start as a rookie and then you play until you're out of the league, right? So I have metrics that I measure, the COM data for each player, and I group them, and the population is then analyzed by what we call a box and whisker. And the box represents 50% of the data. The upper whisker is the top 25, so that's the elite. And the bottom whisker are the worst players in that population. And so let me take my pointer here. Dennis, do you see my pointer? I don't know if I've
I
ever had.
do. I
Okay,
do.
so this shows that this is year two. So what do you mean year two? Well, I asked the question quarterbacks year one that had a COM of 0.04 or basically 40%, which is not a spectacular number. It's kind of a minimal number. I don't want a quarterback that only gives me 40% or whatever that would be about 7 weeks or so of above median. That's not my quarterback one, Dennis. That's a quarterback 2, 3 type. But anyway, I had to start somewhere. I made it very loose to add the amount of data. And so I looked at all quarterbacks for year one, their rookie year, that were above 0.04. And I asked the question of their career arc, what did they do in the next 9 years? So this is their career arc. And if you look at that population, here's year two in blue. Notice year three, they drop down. Okay, you can see. And if you just look at the box, let's call it the box top. This box top is about 70%. That's pretty damn good. Dropping to 60, back up to 70. Here's 75 in year four. Year five here is, I'm sorry, year six. So it's 2, 3, 4, 5 is the highest. So notice the peak of the population as far as 50% in the box is year five out. And I think people start getting contracts about year five. So year six, there's a decline. Year seven, the survivors, year 8, 9, 10, and 11, there's so few here. There's very few left after 11 years. So this is year one. The question I had, what do rookies that do fairly good, 40%, what do they look like in their next 9 years? And then I asked the question over here, Dennis, what about ignoring the rookie and start year two at 40%? And you look out and notice year three that is almost as high as year five, and notice a decline as well. So there is something baked in after year five as a group. They start declining, Dennis, even if they were hot rookies or hot after their second year. But these are the differences in the 2 year production. So you might say, looking at year two, you're forgiving a bad rookie year. Maybe they were injured. Maybe there was a top quarterback in front of them. Maybe the coach didn't trust them, whatever. You throw out year one, what do you see in the next 9 years? And this says, no, I want to include year one. What do I see? So right away, this gives you a profile and a prediction, especially in Dynasty, Dennis. This is gold for Dynasty. You can actually do a prediction and actually assess odds. What is the odds that this rookie quarterback I draft year one, that if I think he's going to be above 4, what is their value, say, to year five? And so if somebody asks me to buy them or trade them, you can kind of estimate, will they get better or worse? You can use this in a predictive way if you want to get deeper, and that may be deeper than people want to get, Dennis. But this is giving Dennis and I a way to look at quarterbacks and see what's what. And one last thing. Here is year one. Look at Dart. And I cannot pronounce Tyler's name here, Dennis. Shuck? Is that
Shuck.
how you pronounce his name? Shuck? Dart and Shuck were above zero point 0.6. Nobody else was above 0.04. McCarthy was only 0.3.
Wow.
Yeah, so we have two to look out there. So this data would argue, and you're saying, you mean, well, what happens for bad? Well, there's a 25% chance that their years, coming up, they'll be bad. So it's not like there's no chance they're bad. There's a chance. But there is a chance they improve to 70%, 70, maybe even 75 as a group. So there might be a decline, though, Dennis, right here. So that's interesting. You might actually buy a rookie that did well years, 1 and 2. You might buy them if they decline year 3 because you hope they bounce, or that could mean that they're on the way out early. So have to figure all that out a little bit. The year 2 is Drake May, Williams, Daniels, Mo Dix. Those 5 are above zero point 0.4, and this is their trajectory. And it looks like they're a lot more steady, Dennis. So I would say the next couple
Interesting.
years, you've probably, if you're investing in a rookie startup, these guys have the next 3 or 4 years probably are going to be at this level. Some will improve a little bit, but the data suggests that they, proportionally they won't decline as much as potentially some of these hot rookies. So there is some differences in their profiles year 1 and 2, and I tried to have that. So I may put this as a poster, part of this data. And of course, there are the total, uh, you know, uh, comms for the year. Brissett was 0.07. That was the best for 2025, Dennis. Lawrence, May were all 70% or better here. Purdy, Allen, Prescott, and Stafford were kind of what I call my top 5 or 6 right in there. That was last year's players here. I was just focusing year 1 and 2 just because, rookies in year 2, people may not be as fully owned to them. There may be some bargains in there, but I've got this data as well for Dennis and I to consider. Dennis, I'm going to stop here because that's probably more than most people wanted to hear. They're seeing crazy numbers and sticks and boxes and rocks and throwing at professor and stuff. So I'll stop here.
Yeah, this data is absolutely fascinating to me because, and I'm doing a similar study, and here's the benefit of doing similar studies in science.
Oh, yes.
If you follow up an experiment that somebody does using a slightly different methodology, but you see similar results, it gives you more confidence in the direction that a career might go in fantasy football. And the professor's looking at quarterbacks. He's looked at running backs and wide receivers and tight ends. He will do the studies on that as well with this much detail. And the first thing you're going to see is each position reacts much different
Oh, yes.
than each other. Okay. Even at quarterback, guys within that quarterback group can react very different as well. And I'm looking at 2 guys now that when I've done my career arc study for quarterbacks using my MVP data, Trevor Lawrence and Tua are 2 that are remarkable in how they've gotten to where they are now. And heading into 26, everybody's like, oh, this Trevor Lawrence, he's really awfully good. And the consensus is Tua is going to be looking for another job somewhere. And they started very different. Tua started better. He had an 86 as a rookie for his MVP. Trevor Lawrence only at 12. It's a huge difference. But Tua followed.
Had 0.2, Tua 0.4, double the consistency year 1.
Oh yeah,
double.
And year two, Tua dropped off to 45.
He dropped to 30%.
Trevor Lawrence surged to 94. Now he had a coaching
65%.
Yeah,
had a great year 2.
That's a huge difference.
3 times the movement up. 3 times.
Yep. And year 3, Lawrence followed up a 94 with an 80.
He
Yeah.
declined to about 4.4, and
Yeah.
Tua went
Declined,
down.
but not a
Yeah.
bad season. And then
No,
Tua,
and Tua got back to close to point 0.4. So he
correct. And
bounced back.
he went all the way up to 100 in MVP. But if you look at where they are now,
Oh yeah. Lawrence is
Trevor,
point 0.7. Tua last year was 0.28, the worst he's ever had.
and
Very concerning.
yes, and when I look at the two players, the first thing that I notice is that Trevor Lawrence has been somewhat consistent. His
Yes.
67 that he had in his year 4,
Mm-hmm.
he was injured. Okay, so a little drop off, I'm going to ignore that. When I look at, he had a 94, an 80, a 67 in a partial season, and then a 94. I look at those 4 years and I say, that is a guy that is an 80 to 95 reliable.
Which is a low QB1 in your system?
It's
Your
yeah,
MVP?
I would have him as maybe like my QB 8 to 12,
Mm-hmm.
but a lock for that position. Okay. So here's the thing. If he's priced at a QB 8 or 10, mm-hmm. I like him a lot better than others that'll be in that group because he's shown that consistency mm-hmm. to be in that 7th to 11th QB rating using my data. Mm-hmm. Now I compare that versus Tua, who's been as low as a 21 and as high as 100.
Yeah.
But has never had 2 years in a row that have shown an increase. Okay. I look at that and I go, man, that guy's more unpredictable. So I don't know what to expect from him the following year. That's how this consistency data within the whole idea of being consistent. There are some players who are very consistent from year to year. There are other guys, and your data is showing it. They have a spike week or a spike year. They have a bad year. They have a spike year. They have a bad year.
But look at Brock Purdy, the last 3 years above 0.6. That is gold, folks. He's probably not in the top 4 or 5.
No, he's been a rock, and he's a guy too that I'm looking at. I'm going, man, for next year, if he's priced the way he was this year, mm-hmm. I'm taking a shot at him. He had 100, then 107, dipped to 73, and back up to 100. And here's the thing: when I say dipped to a 73, 73 is still not awful. Like that's a QB 13. Mm-hmm. QB 13, QB 12 guy. If I drafted him 10th or later at quarterback, I'm okay with that. Because that gave me some consistency that I might not expect at that point. And then if I get his 100, which he's had 3 of 4 years, he's been 100 or better. Mm-hmm. And if I'm drafting him at QB 10, I'm expecting an 80 to 85. So if I can get 100 out of him, 105, I'm loving that. This is how we can use this data at that next level of understanding. Everybody's going to have fluctuations from one season to the next because of injuries, because of what's around them on the field. Mm-hmm. But if I have a guy who minimizes his big years and bad years, if he has consistency from year to year, mm-hmm. and he can settle in to an 85 to a 95, mm-hmm. like a Dak Prescott, but I'm drafting him at a point in the draft where I'm used to getting 60 to 70 on MVP, mm-hmm. that's a bonus. Mm-hmm. Now, all I have to do is combine him. Could you imagine if you had bought Dak Prescott and Brock Purdy at their ADPs this year and had them on your same team,
Mm-hmm.
you're getting two very inexpensive quarterbacks
Yep.
that produced, like, even if you were wrong in picking the right starter on a weekly basis,
You could stream them well.
the worst you got was QB 8 to 10 performance.
Yeah.
If you pick the right guy on any given week, using our defense against position data, using our efficiency data home and away,
Mm-hmm.
now all of a sudden, the combination of Dak and Brock, their best weeks, is close to QB 3 to 5 production.
Mm-hmm.
And you bought them at 10 and cheaper.
Right.
This is a very important data study that you're doing for quarterback.
Yeah.
Because I am more of the belief right now, February 7th, subject to change.
Right.
Right now, my strategy in a better than zero draft strategy for next year,
Mm-hmm.
I'm probably not touching a quarterback until I get to round 7,
Yeah.
6 or 7.
Mm-hmm.
Might be the earliest that I even think about grabbing a quarterback. I don't even care if one of the big names drops into the third or fourth when they were supposed to go in the second.
A preview to answer that question about where quarterbacks are going. This is my drafting pattern, top-down view that I use, and we'll probably talk about this. I don't know if we're going to show this data, but we can say, but Dennis, round 3 and round 4, the top 3 quarterbacks are gone. Okay, so that can tell you something. I will say this about overlays and underlays. This is the data. I think I sent you this.
Yes.
It shows all the players' best ball by their position score based on ADP, the top 24 running backs, what round they're going in, etc. This is basically round 1, 2 to round 6. This is their ADP, the average, and this is their com score order from last year, and this is their predicted points. And what I did was took this number here, their com score, and subtracted their positional ADP score, and I got a number. And if the number's positive, that is an underlay. And if the number is negative, that's an overlay. So Jahmyr Gibbs was the 11th RB, Dennis. He's going number 2. I'm probably not having a lot of Gibbs. If my choice is Gibbs or Bijan, I'm picking Bijan all day long. I do notice that A-Shane and McCaffrey are -2, so they're a little bit right now overlay. The biggest scare that I have, look at Ashton Genty, 20th in ComScore. He's 6th in best ball ADP. He's a plus 14. That is a big underlay, Dennis. Whew, hard for me to want to invest in him versus somebody like a Cook or a Saquon or Jacobs or Brown. And even Hampton's a little overpriced at a plus 11. Bucky Irwin's a plus 10. Derrick Henry's a -8, Dennis. That's good. Current Williams, -9. Scatterbo is the best pick in the first 2 rounds, -18. I know people saying we've got to fight Tyrone Tracy. Maybe early. If he can do what he did last year, Tyrone will be shifted back, and Scatterboo will be the dog there. Swift is still a bargain here. Javonte Williams and Quentin Judkins is a play minus. So Dennis, I use this as a way to measure. And remember, folks, by the time we're serious drafting, I will have Dennis's MVPs, My other metrics will have some other data, and we will have a we'll have a secret cheat sheets at the draft night out that will have then the highs and lows, and it will warn us and tell us, hey, this is a little low in this category. You know, the first 3, 4, 5 rounds, I don't want somebody with a weak one or two of our consistency metrics. Why take that chance when I can get a player that's positive in all of them? So I think that allows us to look at the big picture a little bit and try to find. We found some good bargains last year. Dennis, if I remember right, with your
Yep.
MVP and my
Yep.
column and whatnot, looking at their overall. And so I sent Dennis that spreadsheet, and he'll fill it in. This will be our secret data. We may or may not share, depends on how sweet we're feeling. But I was feeling cranky and didn't feel like sharing much of it. So,
And I'm kind of wondering if we need to do one of our posters this year
we can do it.
on forecasting
We can.
one position and showing, given just that little nugget of
Well, I did that
stuff.
last year with the fantasy points per game.
Yes.
And I've got to
Yes.
follow up on what the poster predicted. I've got the poster.
Yeah, and this is the key is sometimes I will take a guy who's a little bit of an underlay because he's secure. Okay. So Bijan Robinson, will he finish as the number one running back next year? Possible, but probably not. Somebody will probably have a bigger year than Bijan. But I'm fairly safe that he'll be a top 5 guy at the position. If I were to put a percentage on confidence of him finishing top 5, the only negative percentage with him is injury potential, which is almost impossible to forecast. So I'll take that bit of an underlay in odds. What I don't want to do is take a huge underlay in odds. And Ashton Gianti is a great example. Fabulous ball player playing on an awful team behind an awful offensive line. Do we expect a miracle with the Raiders? Do we expect them to be a great team next year just because they've changed management at the top?
Mm-hmm.
I want to see it. Like, show me about 3 new guys at offensive line that have a chance to start. And I might be more of a believer, but he had a 71 last year, which is not awful. Okay, that's RB23. But you had to pay RB8 to 10 price tag on him. If you end up with more than 2 of those guys that are double digits behind their draft value in the first 5 rounds, you're cooked. I don't think you're coming back from that. And that's the joy of our metrics. When we combine them, Professor, I believe we get a better result than any one metric on its own. And again, this is a horse race thing that we've understood over the years. You've got a class number, you've got a pace number, you've got a speed number. All of those things, all of those numbers alone will not necessarily find you the winner. But who has the best mix of those characteristics will often lead you to the best bet. And the big problem in fantasy football is between that first and second year with players. A good one will see an increase. So Giante from 71, even if things didn't change much with the Raiders, he's probably good for a 10 to 15% jump, which is a good jump. But that still only gets him to RB 15 to 20. And he's going to go long before that in drafts.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's asking too much. And it's not because, and here's the thing, he could jump up to a 140 and be the leading running back next year, and it wouldn't surprise me, wouldn't shock me. But the player you took instead of him will also have a better year. We have a really good year. And I'd rather have that safety. It's when you get late in the draft, you're looking at upside only.
Yep.
Early in the draft, I want some safety. I want guys that, I want the Pukas and the Amon-Ra St. Browns at wide receiver who always are good. At running backs, I want a good young running back with less mileage on his legs. I love A-Shane going into next year. Because that Miami offense could even be better next year with better quarterback play if they can find the right quarterback. So if they find the right quarterback, I'm loving that. Bucky Irving is a guy that I'm intrigued about, even though he had a bad year last year relative to what we expected from him.
Yes.
I could see him bouncing back. He dropped to an 80 on MVP. That's RB 20. The year before, he was an RB 12. But we're also getting him real cheap as a rookie. So we're just in that beginning time of looking. What scares me the most after my running back study, there is an abnormally high number of running backs that had their best year of their career as a rookie and never came close to it again.
Right.
That's a scary, scary guy to draft. Carlos Hyde, 94 as a rookie, never saw better than 33 the rest of his career in MVP. That's scary. And yeah, you could say, well, he eventually got hurt. Yes, he did. But he had the first big drop without injury. Those are the guys that frighten me. The guys that show some consistency from year to year are the guys that intrigue me. We need to find more of those guys and fewer of the guys who spike out that first year. You mentioned DeAndre Swift. He's a guy that started strong, 108, 117, rookie in second year, dropped off bad. By year 4, he was down to a 53. He was back up to 94 last year. And he's coming cheaper in drafts than some of these other guys. I think he might have another good year. That's the way we need to look at the running back position. And I love that idea of underlay versus overlay. As I said, I'll bet on an underlay early in the draft, but only if I see that safety that I like. Giante is not safe. He could go either way. He could fall farther next year. It's a possibility he could be worse than he was as a rookie.
It depends on your risks, your uncertainty level. Are you comfortable? I mean, you better have a high opinion of their floor ceiling for you to take him where he's going. That I'm not saying don't. I'm just be aware of the range of outcomes, and I'm a little worried about his range of outcomes.
Yeah, and I'd rather be betting on a guy like A Shane. He was a
Yes.
122, 131, 131.
No, A Shane right now is actually, believe it or not, is actually a little bit of a bargain.
And
That
I'd make a
intrigues me.
case of saying that right now, going into 2026, it is February 7th. A lot
Yep.
can change. My three safest running backs next year:
Yep.
Bijan, Gibbs, and A Shane. Not in that order. I'd
Yep.
prefer A Shane over
So
Gibbs.
Gibbs, then, what do you? I have some issues with him versus his price.
Versus his price, I do too, because last year he had a 118 as MVP. That's
Right.
RB6. Okay.
Right.
And what was he? What were you having to spend, like RB3 for him?
I had him as, yeah, no, two.
Two. So yeah, I do have a little trouble with that.
I
But if
had him
he's
in an 11 com
yeah,
score last year. He had
yeah,
a 0.76, which is great, Dennis. But Bijan had a 0.82. McCaffrey had a 0.94. A. Shane had a 0.93. Taylor had a 0.82. Cook had a 0.82. Chase Brown had a 0.82. Derrick Henry had a 0.82. And Kerwin Williams had a 0.82. And Skidaboo had a 0.87. So Skidaboo is the third best in com. And he's
yeah,
going 21st.
yeah. I really am intrigued by that because they're going to have some changes that should be for the positive with the Giants. If Jackson Dart stays healthy, you bring back Neighbors healthy, and you got Scatabo healthy. If they're all healthy at the beginning of the year,
Yeah.
that's an offense that I'll probably be well invested in
Yeah.
because I think there's a lot of upside potential for all three of those players. And it'll, again, depends on the price tag. At their current price tags, A Shane's a much better bargain than either Gibbs or Bijan. But
Yes.
could I make a case for taking Ashawn ahead of Bijan? Probably not.
The
But
only
here's the
thing with that is Bijan, you and I talked about with Penix versus
yes.
Cousins. I was not pleased to see a differential. I would like my top guy to be quarterback proof, and I'm a little
Yes.
concerned about that.
Yes, I agree with you there. When I looked at
And
the
we do need to follow up on that a little more, Dennis. I don't think, we did, but you and I focused on that and we did note that.
yeah, and for the record, in my data, Penix had Bijan did better with Penix than he did with Cousins.
Yes.
But even with Cousins, he was a 122, which
Yeah.
anything over
I'm not saying he
120,
was a dud, but
but what if he gets worse quarterback play out of Penix next year?
yeah.
See, every player, no matter how great they are, if you cannot look at that player and come up with three things that concern you, you're not looking at the data close enough. Because
Yeah.
even as great of a player as Bijan Robinson is,
Yeah.
because you will have to spend a top three pick overall to
Yeah.
get him, he better be the most bulletproof of guys possible. Or I'm going to pass on him and I'm going to take somebody who I do feel is
Yeah.
safer. And the crazy thing is, I can make a case for Trey McBride being the safest first round pick next year in tight end premium leagues. That's crazy when you have that much value, but it's not just how good Trey McBride is.
Yeah, there's
It's
going to be a lot of decisions you're going
yes.
to have to make right now, Dennis. It is two tight ends are taken round one. I think seven RBs and like four, I'm sorry, seven WRs and four, or maybe seven, four, or three RBs. There's a number. I can look at that real quick. But anyway, you're going to have to decide because the public is jumping on WR's first round here. Let me show that so I can hit my point. So right now, in early best ball, it is four RBs, one, two, three, four, five, six, and then two tight ends. And notice the public is saying Bijan and Gibbs are way different than McCaffrey, and A-Shane is sitting right there. And theoretically on the river, Dennis, you might have a shot at Bowers. You could do A-Shane and Bowers, maybe. More like, A-Shane and whoever that WR is. Because I haven't done WRs. Or you can do a doublet RBs. You could have two top five by public standards, not by our standards, two top five RB, and then, hopefully collect. But if you wait too late, Dennis, the top 12 WRs are gone by round two. So the time you're picking, again, you may be fishing in this pool here. So you're going to have to do a lot of discussions in your head about how to play that, Dennis. And again, if you got an early draft pick, do you pick one of these RBs? Do you pick a WR? So versus a late pick, what are you going to do? So folks, that's why I use these maps, because if you know ahead of time what your draft pick is, then you can make some conclusion or make a plan. I know once the draft start, plans go out the door. I understand that. Or about 5 drinks in, your plans are out the door as well. Okay, I got that. But in our draft night out, Dennis, we'll have a good feel for where this is at by end of July. So we'll know a lot more about where we should shift or not shift. But anyway,
And sometimes where you're going to go in those first 2 rounds
mhm,
it is based on which position you have the most confidence in for the value guys
yeah,
later in the draft.
right.
So if
That's true too. Right, right.
yeah, last year I was really confident in Chris Olave.
Uh-huh.
I knew Chris Olave was going to be a WR1, and I didn't have to spend WR1 capital to get him. So going into drafts, if I was positioned right to get one of my top 4 running backs,
Right.
I was comfortable taking running back back to back. What if I can
Right.
get 2 of my top 5 running backs
Yeah.
in the first 2 rounds? Well, I'm feeling good about that because I know Olave is going to be a WR1. He might be, I was thinking of him more of like a 10th to 15th, and he ended up being more of 5 or 6. So
Right.
he even paid off more than I expected. But that's how it goes. And the year before, we felt very confident in guys like Kyron Williams, Chase Brown, Bucky Irving. So I could afford to be more wide receiver
Mhm.
heavy
And
early
so,
in the
Dennis,
draft.
here is kind of me looking at the top WRBs rounds one and two, but here is the top 12. Olave's number 12 right now in best ball.
And I would not mind opening my draft with Olave again next year because I think Shuck's going to be better in year two.
Mhm.
Yes, love
But I'm saying,
JS.
imagine starting out, you could theoretically be grabbing a Cook Olave, or maybe even
Yes.
if Taylor's still there. In other words, people may be flocking to some of these WRs. But again, who your draft pick is, if Puka's there, it's going to be hard to turn him down, or maybe Sun God or JS. It's just, you don't know until, if you got draft pick one. I'm looking hard at Bijan. I'm really concerned about Chase. We hadn't talked about him,
Yep.
but with Burrow hurt last year, Chase fell
Oh,
down. And I
yeah.
just, is so, to me, his floor ceiling is much wider. His whiskers, Dennis, are really far apart versus, I think, Bijan is whiskers are closer together. And that's what I like in an early pick. But anyway, folks, I've got all this data actually on the science of fantasy football. And I know we're going to talk about this on the Aces Up. And I made a video of me running my mouth about all this. You can go into more cranky professor mode. There's a video. And again, I know a lot of people are Super Bowl, let me bet on this and that. But, I got it there. After the Super Bowl, come back, listen to this, listen to that, and you can catch up with the best ball. And by the way, at the FFPC, $5 you can go play a nice tight end premium 1 point PPR. And, Dennis and I usually use that for just kind of practice more than anything. Okay. So it's nice, $5, and you could spend, even 100. You could do 20 between now and when you're getting serious, and not really probably lose a lot of money, and you'll get real time practice.
Real time practice, and you usually, I have found over the years, I'll scratch out a meager
Yeah,
profit
it is not
in
where my money
my best
comes.
ball.
Yeah,
No, no, that's just an investment in understanding the process and watching.
right.
It's just exercise. It's doing some practice. It's going to the driving range and hitting a bucket. It's going to be teaching you something about where you need to look at on improving your game
Yep.
going into next season. Well, speaking of games, we got the big Super Bowl matchup. Professor, why don't you take us through the data?
So we are now shifting to our matchup lab portion. Woo woo. Okay. If you haven't followed us, and who knows who that is, the two or three, welcome. Uh, Dennis and I look at the top and the bottom each uh, games, top three or four, bottom and top as far as predicted scoring by Vegas. I've got some secret data that suggests that passing yards and total yards, there is a connection. It is not just random. There's something to be said for a high scoring prediction game and a low scoring, Dennis. On average, I know anything can happen. You know, I think the Saints are playing in France this year or some craziness. So God knows where, they'll, like I said, they'll be playing, and like I said, I'm ready for the aircraft carrier in the middle of the Pacific or in Antarctica, tossing penguins around or something. It's crazy what the NFL's doing. But anyway, Dennis, 45 points is about average. Seattle is the favorite, spread 5 points. New England is the underdog. 27-17 is what Vegas is thinking. The money line minus 24. 240 or plus 200 there. That's interesting. Trying to get some money here. So, betting wise, just straight up, I bet there's going to be a lot of people intrigued by New England. New England and Seattle, oh, I'm sorry, the opponent was not Denver. That was last time on that. So you should strike that. I need to repair that, but I didn't. Anyway, New England uh, is, Dennis, you know what, Dennis? I got to get rid of that, me bad, because that was playing against, let's see here, my bad. I was jumping ahead. And so, Dennis, why don't you think about the money line real quick while I go find the real daps here
Yeah,
to think about?
yeah. When I look at this game and I look at both teams during the course of the year, and the common thread that you're hearing in a lot of people talking about this game is, oh, New England had such an easy schedule and Seattle played a tougher schedule, and that's true. That is absolutely true. But when I break down the data, Seattle was a really good team at home this year. And on the road, they were very solid, but they were so much better at home. That home field advantage for Seattle definitely comes into play. And so when I look at this game and I look at, okay, who's got the better defense? Okay, yes, I don't think there's much of a doubt that Seattle probably has the better defense on paper.
Yes.
Who has the better quarterback? I kind of think I can make a
Drake
case
May.
for Drake May being the better of the two quarterbacks. Is it going to be a defense driven game? Is it going to be a quarterback who makes a big play at the end of the game
Mm-hmm.
type of a situation? That's what I think this game should be closer than what a lot of folks think. But when I break down the data,
Mm-hmm.
it would not be a shock to me to see Seattle dominate the game and win big. Okay. And when I say win big, win by more than 10 points.
Right.
If I look at it the opposite way and I say, okay, what's the likelihood of New England winning by more than 10? Probably not great. But I don't think if I would put all of the four possible outcomes
Right.
on a chart and try to put percentage of confidence, my biggest confidence would be on it being a close game. And it would probably be slight edge to Seattle based on the fact that I think they got the better defense. But sometimes in one game of football, the quarterback play can put a better defense in a worse situation. And that's why I think this game is going to be a lot closer than a lot of folks are thinking. And I'm kind of thinking if this game was played in Seattle, Seattle's got the easy win. Okay.
Right.
But on a neutral site, I think New England could give them a game. And right now, 75% of the money line bets are going for Seattle. 62% against the spread going for Seattle. I think that's too high. I think this is closer to 58% should be on the money line,
Right.
and 54% should be on the spread. I just think the I think Seattle is, I mean, like we were talking earlier, I think they're an underlay in this situation at the current odds.
Yes. The DAPs are now complete. It is, New England's facing on paper very tough, but the defense of New England has been above average as far as takeaways and making fantasy points. So if I was betting, you might bet some turnover or two there. Hunter Henry should have the best opportunity against this defense on paper. So that might be your parlay there, Dennis, a defensive parlay with Hunter Henry scoring some, receptions and yards and things. But it looks on paper like New England's, it's just, it's too tough for them on paper. Seattle, all about the passing and the tight end and the wide receivers and shutting down the run. So Seattle's going to have to pass to really make their living. And Barner is has an advantage as well. This could be your doublet here. Both tight ends making noise could be a parlay. And I think JSN is going to get some gravy as well. So that could be a throughway parlay here, Dennis. I don't know, receptions or scoring touchdowns or something, but that's what it looks to me. And it looks like rushing is going to be used to open up passing. I don't see a lot, unless, like I said, New England's turnovers gets them close, then I could see one of the running backs. I guess both are healthy, that Henderson and Stevenson are both healthy.
Yep.
Okay, so who knows how they'll deal that. Charbonnet is out, so it's the Walker show, or Halani might get an opportunity, uh, for some action. But it looks like passing to me. Seattle does not love their efficiency drops to 65%.
Yes.
New England, it don't matter to them. They're good
No,
away or home. So
exactly.
New England wins that battle of efficiency. So Seattle's going to really have to stay on target, but I think the DAPs allow them to. The shift is passing for Seattle, 7% more than, and rushing is about league average, but 7%. So as far as the bias, it looks like Seattle has the right bias for New England's defense, and that could be fatal, Dennis. New England is balanced, but I don't think Seattle's defense is going to let them stay balanced. I do not think they're going to have the patience to keep running. I think that's going to break, especially if Seattle gets a touchdown or two ahead. I think they're going to forget the balance, and I think that's how New England has won, is being balanced and staying in there. And I think if that paradigm is broken and they start pass, 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 I think New England's will be struggling and Seattle will win. So I would take Seattle in my pick 'em if we were playing that, but I'm not sure the odds, and I'm not. I could see 45 being too high or too low because of Seattle. I think Seattle could get two, three touchdowns ahead, Dennis, and New England just start airing it out and get crazy, and we could break that. Or it could be more a defensive struggle. But I think Seattle wins.
So I have a hard time breaking this game down because I think Seattle's offense is so much better at home than they are on the road. Versus New England, I think is fairly balanced
Yes.
and very balanced with their attack, very balanced on wherever they're playing of doing well. And the Super Bowl's an unusual game when it comes to the fans because you don't have either side really starting with a big advantage always. And sometimes the neutral fans are on the underdog. And that's kind of where I am of saying, here's how I think this game is going to break down. It's going to come down to New England has shown in the regular season and even in the playoffs, they're not afraid to blitz, to take away that passing game. And we know from the past, the only times that Sam Darnold has success is when he has a nice clean pocket. And when he has a nice clean pocket, he is going to eat you alive. And especially in this game, because he's got Shaheed to go deep. He's got JSN, who's probably the best wide receiver in the league right now. And then he's got Cooper Kupp, who's just that guy that can get you a first down when you need it. I don't think either team is going to be able to run the ball consistently against the opposing defense. That's what the DAPs are telling us. What the DAPs are not telling us is how will Seattle do in a neutral environment if the opposing team can make Darnold see ghosts again, like he has in his career. And the one factor that might come into play to allow New England to counteract that very tough Seattle pass rush, because they can get at you with the same efficiency using 4 guys as New England does when they bring 6. But what Seattle might not be able to contain is a quarterback that can get outside that pass rush and can do it with his legs. And I think Drake May, if he had, for New England to win, Drake May's going to have a big game, and he's going to have a big game with his legs as well as his arm. He's going to have to play a very smart game, and you're going to have to see Sam Darnold get flustered. If the quarterback play goes that route, where Drake May can have an impressive game and Sam Darnold has a bad game, has an off game, as we saw him do in the playoffs last year with Minnesota, as we've seen him in his career struggle at times when you put a lot of pressure on him, then I think New England can win it. But New England, if they win, it's going to be because we're under 45.5 points. If Seattle can put numbers on the board, if they can score 25-30, there's no way New England can counteract that. New England's got to win this game by keeping the score low. And I look at the coaches in a Super Bowl. I look at who's been there before. Vrabel has as a player, and I'm not so sure that Seattle's coaching staff has faced that same rigor of this everything on this one game. So I'm going to pick New England for the upset, but only if it's under. If they hit 45.5 or higher, then Seattle had an easy win.
I think the odds of that scenario are, I'm not getting enough money on the money line for that odds.
No, I'd want a little bit higher on the money line.
Yeah.
So I am going to just enjoy this game. The only thing I'm sort of looking at is that over under bet, because I can see more of a reason for them to be under 45.5 than over, but I will probably just enjoy this game for what it is.
Yes.
The Super Bowl.
Yeah.
So head on over to the scienceoffantasyfootball.com and check out the professor's video talking about
Cranky professor.
early, way too early best ball. Head over to the sports affiliation. There's always interesting stuff going on there. So like and subscribe to their YouTube page, and come on back here next week for an edition of the Data Lab here on the Sports Affiliation and the Science of Fantasy Football.
Get to work, folks.